On this Monday, this glorious Monday, my favorite video of all times. I won't say of all times, but in here, called The Kings of Camouflage, which you're going to watch today. Okay, you got an hour and a half. Okay, and the video guide here that goes with it. So I'm gonna turn the lights off so you can see kind of what it looks there. Okay, so yes, that looks like something kind of evil there up on thing. That's a giant. That's not a giant cuttlefish. That's a cuttlefish. Okay, which a lot of times is mistaken for just a normal Humboldt squid or one of the larger different species of squids. Okay, kind of a sad. Does anybody ever seen Sesame Street? I don't know if you guys remember that. So remember Big Bird? You know, the big yellow bird, Big Bird. Okay, remember his little imaginary friend that we all knew, they're the big elephant called Snuffleupagus. Doesn't that look like Snuffleupagus? Anybody? Okay, if not, look that up on YouTube. But yeah, has the kind of the long thing, or kind of reminds me of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. But anyways, you'll be watching this. It's got some really good stuff. It goes in order there. But there's a couple things really paying close attention to. Is obviously the thing that'll really catch your attention is their ability to change their outer structure of their skin, and actually the coloration too as well. Not only texture but coloration. And when they get stressed or something's not cooperating, they go into a strobing mode, same way like a strobe flashlight or a Halloween strobe, which then kind of, in some cases, stuns or freezes either the prey or the predator, depending on what it is, for them to gain advantage. So it's kind of interesting how you see these natural things. It's the same basic concepts that are used in today's society, whether it be by law enforcement or controlling animals or hypnosis or something like that. So the stroke is pretty interesting. And there's no documentation of it, but you know that's where a lot of the ideas, just in general, by observing things that happen in nature, that we've all adopted through technology or copied, I guess you might want to say. I mean, and just seeing things like this. There's also about, where they talk, how they kind of explain there's about it's not even 5, it's probably about a couple, 2-3 minutes, that they go into like a computer graphic explanation of explaining how it changes its colors. And basically, it's something very simple as you have layers upon layers, which you'll see in the video, of pigmentation, okay? And they're like little dots. And for those of my artists that are watching, if you know anything about or don't, they have the color spectrum, which, the red, blue, yellow, the main, and how to mix and so on. So layers upon layers of the skin, they have these colored pigmentations. So as they read their environment, the muscles that stretch around like rubber bands, they pull outward, enlarging this spot of pigmentation. It'll show it in a little computer graphic little diagram. And by it being layered, reds, iridescence, this and that, they're able to mimic, kind of like the same way we now use the term digital camo or digital camouflage patterns. It's the same pixel type thing upon layered, and then when you see it from a farther back, it completely blends in. But the ability that they can do that at a snap of a finger and read that is pretty amazing. When you have this, in some cases, I mean they're pretty good size, maybe like the size of like a Nerf football on average, but they can get a little bigger. But they only have a life expectancy of about 3 years. They don't have any like a massive defensive stuff like armor or this or that. So they really are good to eat. They're basically calamari. If you ever had calamari, that's squid, octopi, or cuttlefish that you've eaten at a restaurant. So they have to use their wits and their brains about them, and that's what one of the things that's most fascinating about this particular mollusk is their ability to do that. You'll also notice I don't know if the camera in the studio they talk, but you'll notice the concave shape or the W shape of the eye. They talk a little bit about, I think, their vision in this. But they also talk a little bit about the development of the eye as well. Okay. They do. There's a really cool experiment in about the midway through there, what they call Troy the toy fish, that when you pay attention to. It basically parallels that of Pavlov's law. If you've ever heard of Pavlov's law in any psychology class, the old ring the bell, give the dog some food, ring the bell, give the dog some food, you ring the bell and the dog starts salivating, okay? Learn behavior, okay? We all know about that. We're the same way as kids, or as people, we're creatures of habit, Okay, so they take a simple experiment in a laboratory setting by using time and repetition and visual stuff to see if their ability to recall or memorize. And it's pretty interesting how their ability actually to process this stuff. So pay close attention to that. And there's also one with feeding, the same thing. It's basically mimicked. There's two different experiments. One to see if they can make a decision, and one of them as far as memorizing or remembering, okay, a sound or a noise or a light or something in that nature when it comes to reward or food, okay? No different than any conditioning with any, if you want to say training, an animal, okay, or just training anything. I mean, isn't that kind of what we do nowadays even with ourselves? Hey, you get good grades, here's $20. Hey, if you'll get this done, I'll buy the new iPhone. I mean, you know what I mean? So we use the reward, unfortunately, a lot of times way too much, but a lot of times gets us the results we're trying to achieve. Okay, so I guess we all kind of follow this parameter to some way, shape, or form. We think so. That'll be about halfway through there when we talk about that. But one thing you'll find really interesting, which I think is without little things, and I always get a little kind of funnies and some blushing and whatnot, but when they talk about their mating ritual, okay? And one of the interesting things about the cuttlefish is they go against the grain about the strong or the survival of the fittest in the sense, like for example, with white-tailed deer, okay? There's lots of sparring during the rut in which the female deer go into estrus where they're ready to mate. The larger, more dominant bucks, will compete for their attention. They'll fight, sometimes, cause death. Bighorn sheep, buffalo, I mean, you name it, all species compete for the right to pass on their genetic material one way, shape, or form. But what's interesting with the cuttlefish is it's not always the strongest, and I won't ruin that for you, but they can actually figure out how to mimic, and I won't ruin that for you, that physical body posture and so on, that to distract in order to, I guess you want to say, steal the girl. And then what's even more interesting is then the female suitors get to actually choose, like calling cards that you'll see. We'll talk about the gametes. They actually can, a later choice, meet and mate with multiple ones, in which later then they can pick what they feel, and there's no randomability. They haven't figured that out, but why they choose which suitor to fertilize their eggs, whatever. But they do this whole scientific test, and it was pretty interesting, so I won't ruin that. But they do a little bit of camouflage or a little bit of different when it comes to the mating ritual, which is a first time of anything of this caliber, in which they kind of, I guess you might want to say, is trickery. Okay. And then, let's see, that's the tomato fish, and lay the eggs. And then they talk about one of my favorite little things called the flamboyant cuttlefish, okay? In which a gentleman talks about that whole thing in nature about colorization, okay? And one of the things you should know, or you probably do, the brighter, more vibrant, that sticks out in its natural background, reds, blues, yellows, fluorescent colors, and so on like an earth tones and green tones and things of that nature, tells those in its surroundings, hey, you know what? I don't have to hide. Go ahead, bite me or try and attack me, whatever. See what happens. There's usually some extreme level of toxicity or venom or poison or something of that nature. And that's how it finishes up. But it shows you a really broad dynamic of a simple cephalopod, a mollusk, okay, a soft-bodied structure that I really think you'll enjoy. And then the reading guide, like I said, it's uploaded, goes in order with it. So it really talks about the hunting thing, and they actually do a lot of simple stuff with it. So I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And then I'll have probably some little extra discussion stuff that I might ask you about, or I will ask you about next class period that goes in parameters with this, which I know, excuse me, that you guys will then submit, okay? But making sure it still opens and everything. Yep. Yep, it will.
Lives right here on Earth. It's
Yep.
calm.
Yep, making sure my video thing. Yeah, but it's called The Kings of Camouflage. You should be able to watch it through YouTube. I copied off this link. It's about 53 minutes long, so it's a long one, but it's a good one. Okay, that's what I wanted you guys to have. We'd be doing this in class. Normally, if we had a 45-minute class, it would take a class and a half. Basically 2 class periods, like a Monday and a Friday, and then or something of that nature. I would do it straight through. And we talk about the behavioral patterns and kind of the stuff, and just like I said, but I really do think you'll like it. I always have. It's a really good one, like I said. Really shows the high level of problem-solving intelligence that this soft-bodied invert that puts them at the top of their game or their grouping, if you want to say, of inverts, and in some cases, a lot of lower level vertebrates. Okay, maybe as much as far as like we're talking about various fish class, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and things of that nature too. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, I'm not going anywhere with that. I'm gonna